Okay, here we go. We are going to jump in and do a little bit of learning about acids and bases. We are in chapter 11, and today we're going to talk just primarily about some of the properties of acids and bases and what an acid and a base is. So let's jump right in. So first of all, let's start by talking about the properties of acids. We're going to learn more specifically about what defines something as an acid, but we're going to just look at the properties of acids to begin. So there are three properties the book mentions about the properties of acids. One is that acids taste sour. That's one property. Another property is that acids are covalent electrolytes. Now, we're going to hang on to that thought for just a minute, but we're just going to go ahead and list that that's what it is. And then the third property that the book gives you is that acids turn blue litmus paper red. Okay? So if you have an acid and you, put an R in there. If you have an acid and you expose it to litmus paper, it's going to take the blue litmus paper and turn it red. So before we go on a little bit further, I want to talk a little bit more about this item here, covalent electrolytes. Now, you and I both know, we went back in chapter 4, we learned that electrolytes are chemicals that conduct electricity when they're dissolved in water. Okay? Now think about that for a minute. We learned that ionic compounds conduct electricity, but that covalent compounds don't. How then can acids be conductors of electricity if they are covalent? All right, hang on. We'll answer that question in just a minute. Let's go ahead and talk about the properties of bases. Okay, let me list that up here. All right, so properties of bases. One property of bases is that they taste bitter. Another property of bases is that they are slippery to the touch when dissolved in water. And the third property we're going to talk about is that they turn red litmus paper blue. Now, here's a little hint. Blue. Let's just get blue. All right. Here is my handy-dandy helpful way to remember that, is that bases turn the paper blue. Okay, so if you have a litmus paper and you expose it to a base, red litmus paper that you expose to a base, it will turn it blue. Okay, so we now know a little bit about the properties of acids and the properties of bases. All right, so let's take another minute and talk about what it means for something to be an acid or a base. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start by giving you just the definition from the book. Okay, an acid is a chemical that donates H+ ions. All right, so an acid is a chemical that donates H+ ions. And a base is defined as a chemical that accepts H+ ions. Okay, now let's talk for just a minute about what that means. Hydrogen is number 1 on the periodic table. Now, from what we've studied before, we know that that means it's, given that its number is 1, that means it has 1 proton and 1 electron. Okay? When hydrogen turns into an ion, that means it gets rid of one of its particles, subatomic particles, either its proton or its electron. Hydrogen always gets rid of electrons, meaning that it has an H plus. It has one proton left. But hydrogen only has one proton and one electron. So if you have an H plus ion, that means you have a proton. That is what you have. So we will also call acids proton donors. And we will also call bases proton acceptors. All right, so that's what an acid and a base is. The last thing I want to touch on just real quickly is the idea of that some substances can they can act as either an acid or a base, and we would call that substance amphoteric. And that means it's capable of reacting as either an acid or a base. Okay? The substance that is the most common amphoteric substance is water. So water can be either an acid or a base. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, we mean that in certain chemical reactions, it will act as an acid, and in different chemical reactions, it will act as a base. It does not mean that water can be both an acid and a base in the same chemical reaction. It simply means that it has the capability of acting in either way, depending on the circumstance, the chemical reaction that it's participating in. Now, next week, what you're going to start doing is you're going to learn to identify, given a chemical reaction, you're going to identify which substance in the chemical reaction is an acid and which substance is a base. And we'll talk more about that in the next video, but that is what we need for this week. That's our lecture material. If you have questions, feel free to reach out and let me know that. Also, I will be posting YouTube videos that have certain of the homework problems worked out so that you can walk through that if you didn't understand the problem. Also, I will not have the problems worked out, but what I will do for any test problems is that I will allow you to rework problems you missed, and I will list particular problems, and I will list the steps you need to have to solve them, right? I will not work through every single problem, but I will list out the steps, and if you want to rework those, you can. So that's what we've got for today. Blessings on the rest of your week, and I look forward to seeing your faces sometime soon.